Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Titan Crystal. Well, more specifically, I'm going to be kind of ranking up the champions in 4 tiers based on how much of a meta relevance I believe these champions will have. And to be very specific, I do not rank them here based on whether you can do some cool things with them. I do not rank them here based on, how fun they are to play or anything like that, or, how cool of a video you can record with Cyclops, for example. I am ranking here on how likely they are to play a meaningful role in the competitive game modes, in the battlegrounds, in the Alliance Wars. And that's the main thing. I have long kind of argued the case that if a champion is getting used in the most competitive game modes by the most skilled players in the game, that has value. Because chances are then those same champions are also going to be good just about everywhere else in the game. And that typically is always the case as well. And it's not even whether I like these champions. Because for instance, I like Dracula. I only have a 4 and a 5-star Dracula at the moment on my account, but I genuinely enjoy using him. I think he's a fun, cool champion that's designed in a way that I do like. I just don't think he's quite good enough, especially because he has virtually no defensive value either. Mutant class is stacked up top with primarily offensive champions as well, and he's just not anywhere near as good as, Shatra is, as Kushala is, as Tigra is, so on. And therefore, it's quite tricky for me to see Dracula becoming significantly important champion for the game, similar to Mr. Knight. And I'm going to be first admit, not like I'm an expert with Mr. Knight. I did max out my 5-star just to, pick up his rotations and check out his playstyle. But I have seen like nobody do anything with the guy. People just don't use him. The people who I know for a fact have ranked him up, don't use him. Just about anywhere. And for a good reason. I think he's a fairly bad champion. At his max, at his best, he does worse than a lot of champions that have to do a lot less to kind of get going. And that's kind of the story of Moon Knight. I think the entire aura of Moon Knight got destroyed when Hitmonkey outsped him by like a factor of 2 in like a generic fight. And yeah, obviously Mr. Knight has more abilities and yada yada yada, but the essence is like, what do you do with the champions? Like, because at the moment in the game, the most important thing is not necessarily how fast you finish a fight, but who can you finish these fights up against? Realistically, for competitive play, whether we like it or not, but this game has changed into, again, it doesn't matter how fast you are. What matters is whether you counter Serpent, Dark Phoenix, Captain Britain, Photon, Spider-Woman, Jean Grey, so on and so forth. And if the answer is no, or not particularly well, then the result is nobody cares about you. Even if you counter some of those champions, but there are other champions that just do more, better, and or faster, you're kind of out of luck. And I think Mr. Knight, I mean, I keep forgetting that the balance program is dead. It says like, I hope he gets like a good balance update, like at the very least, like Gladiator, he used to absolutely suck. He got balanced a bit and he's better. But I think Mr. Knight is up for grabs for being by far the worst and the most awful Summoner Choice champion. I did not vote for him, so well done me. But yeah, there you go. So Mr. Knight, on a personal note, I have like very little expectations or hopes for him. With Dracula, I like him a lot. I wish he was good. I don't think he will be. Frankencastle is a bit more different. I can see him being here and there. Frankencastle is the type of champion that I want to have access to, but I wouldn't rush to rank up if I would get him like quickly. I'd take him probably to rank 2 to mess around in some quests and stuff like that, get more used to. Because again, I do have him at a lower rank level, and he does have his quirky playstyle. But again, I just don't think he replaces or complements the top of the skill class enough as an offensive focus champion, which he is. As a defender, he's going to be absurdly easy to kind of get around to. So I just don't think there's enough there, but under specific conditions in specific metas there might be, because he's still champion, has access to in rate, it's fairly rare, does have his unique unstoppable mechanics and access to crush. All of that stuff might come in handy, but in a generic kind of vanilla circumstance, let's say the new Alliance War Season Battlegrounds meta has 0 nodes, there is no way close he kind of approaches, the deck or, usability in Alliance Wars, I think. And the Cyclops is the thing is, Cyclops is absolutely let down by his awakened ability. His awakened ability is just about 80% of the reason why Cyclops is so bad. If that ability was more similar to Dazzler's, he'd be a good champion. He really, really would be. He'd be at the very least huge champion, because, access to true focus for the entire fight, lots of damage, all that stuff is good, even though he's a bit of a ramp up. But what do you use a mutant attacker for? Typically, he does none of that. He doesn't have the non-contacts, doesn't ignore the physical damage back or damage back like, what every mutant attacker these days does. He doesn't have access to the Daunted, and it's just not working. And with that, I think that's not particularly controversial. I think just what everybody agrees with, the fact that you don't see Cyclops much outside of, fun matchups. Right, let's move on to the top next spots. So these are champions that I do think have specific tasks and their specific conditions or specific node combos when they become good. I think all of these champions are worth having. And again, none of these champions are the ones that I would rush to rank up for their own qualities. Admittedly, I did rush to rank up High Evolutionary, but that was entirely for prestige. But when it comes to the champion abilities themselves, these are champions that, again, I want to have for as and when they might shine. Baron Zemo already has had a couple of metas where he was really good, and he generally becomes very good when he can debuff himself. So weeks 3 to 4 meta in the current Battleground season is going to be very good again for him, because every time you feel a bar of power, you get a debuff on you, and you're going to be able to fill those bars of power quicker. So he's going to be kind of quicker on the uptake there. And High Evolutionary currently in the current meta is actually quite nasty defender. He only has like Starhand, Spider-Man, and Okoye that kind of run through him. And other than that, he can, make people stumble. Obviously, the Maker's relevance is like 100% down to Captain Britain being one of the biggest defensive annoyances, especially in specific metas. But the thing with Maker is, and this is like the real tragedy. First of all, I love Maker as, a character, as, what he stands for. And when he was announced, I was very happy. I was very excited. I hope he's going to be amazing. And it was a letdown. And it still is. And then I have seen more Makers being ranked up recently. And that is, again, not because he's great. It's mainly because he does very well against Captain Britain, let's face it. And the thing with Maker is, most of the time, when my opponent has Maker, I'll still draft Captain Britain because, like, depending on which meta we're talking about, but like in current meta, people still take like 70 seconds and lose like 10% health or 8% health using Maker against Captain Britain. That is not great for your kind of target ideal matchup, right? He's Neuroshock immune, he, doesn't crit, he does all the burst damage, so he bypasses all the Captain Britain stuff, and it's still bad. So the thing about Maker, the way I see Maker right now, is that he's somewhat needed and relevant like right now, but I think we're one good tech champion away from never seeing from Maker again. Like that is how I genuinely feel. As soon as we get a tech champion that's also like either completely Neuroshock immune or has an ability that counters like Captain Britain, specifically, and has half decent damage, we're just never gonna hear from the champion again. He's gonna be left outside in the dark, because there's going to be somebody that does the one thing he's kind of needed for better than he does. And Silver Samurai, I kind of feel, is in same-ish here. The thing with Silver Samurai is he's arguably the best Yelena counter. At the very least, one of the best. The problem is, Yelena is no longer that big of a threat. We all have learned to dex, well, many of us have learned to dex Okoye's level 2, and we end up using, sorry, Yelena's level 2, we end up using Okoye's against Yelena. Obviously, there's already existing platoon of mutant champions like DPX and Jean Grey and Onslaught, especially in the last two. Both of them are dual-purpose champions, you know, so they're much easier to use, rank, and acquire, and get more value out of them. And Solar Samurai again has like very little defensive value. And Yelena is not the level of problem, let's say, that currently Captain Britain, Dark Phoenix, Serpent is. And because of that, the need for additional content to Yelena, I think, is also not as high as it once was. And outside of the Yelena's matchup, he still does some of the fights fine. I just don't think his hit has enough in it for him to be kind of like generic type of matchups. So again, he's a champion that I do want to get. I currently don't have him as a 7-star. And I want to have access to him, but I wouldn't rank 3 him immediately. I would wait for a time or situation when he's like one of the very few counters to Yelena that work, or one of the very few champions that kind of shine in a specific meta. So yeah, right now he's in the second to the bottom tier. And this is kind of also, unfortunately, the story of the current Titan Crystal, where 1, 2, 3, 4 of the new additions to the Titan Crystal, unfortunately, are at the bottom of it, because they just do not have the same quality as champions above. Speaking of champions above, this is where we're going to find the last 2 additions to the Titan Crystal, and Bastion. I am informed that I'm legally not allowed to discuss Bastion at great detail, because my official stance on Bastion has just about always been very good Alliance World champion, not particularly great at anything else. There have been some metas where he's like a little bit better, but realistically, you know, and people always come up with an argument, oh, he can do like this, and like either every player that uses Bastion against me is a bad player and they don't know how to use Bastion, or Bastion is not doing all that well in many of these matchups where you'd expect him to do well. And in Battlegrounds, he's okay, he's usable, but he's not like a great tier. And in Alliance War, he's amazing. Hence, he's in, you know, the 3rd tier. That's solidly in the middle here. He has his uses for sure. He's, by the way, one of the coolest looking characters released this year, and I like him as a character. And again, he's an amazing Alliance War champion. But in Battlegrounds, he just does not share the same level of power at all. Completely. Next up, Cassandra Nova. Cassandra Nova, initially I like her a lot, then my opinion kind of dipped, and recently it's starting to increase. Now, her defensive prowess, again, on specific conditions, like in the current BG meta, is also respectable, so she's a very decent defender. And I think Summoner's Quest, Battle Brawl, definitely kind of like showcased her on the bright side, so she has gotten a lot more popular. You see more of her being ranked, decked, and mained, and used. And I think it's for a good reason. We'll see how she ages. Like, to me, her kit still does kind of feel a little bit incomplete. Best way to put it is like you kind of have to alternate in between like charging heavy attacks and, you know, gaining power and being aggressive and getting neuroshocks on, or letting everything drop off, right? And that also prohibits you from gaining power and spamming special attacks, which ultimately is like what you would ideally want to be doing. So, like, to me, the thing that would absolutely tie her kit together would be some sort of passive power gain, not major, but whilst you're charging heavy attack at the very least. And I think that would make her into a significantly better champion. Kind of like Mordo-esque mechanic where, you know, you gain some power as you're charging heavy attack, maybe not as potent. I think that would make her amazing. As she is, I think she's fine. I'm not certain on how well she's going to age. Next up, Galen. I think Galen has kind of reconstituting himself. Obviously, he used to be one of the top 4 cosmic champions, like the big cosmic top 4. He got gatekept as a 6-star, got released as a 7-star, and for most part, I think he's doing just fine. Like, honestly, I think he's doing reasonably well considering the nature of the defenders that has been released since. The fact that, you know, Solwak is a big problem and he answers that. The fact that he can do Yelena fights and other kind of like miscellaneous fights, I would say, depending on the skill level with the champion that you have. And obviously there will be some of the metas where he kind of goes ham completely. So yeah, I think Galen's a very worthwhile champion to ham and rank. Next up, I kind of want to talk about Lizard before I talk about Cassie. So the thing with Lizard is, I like him a lot. I do have like a 5-star Lizard, and I messed around with him a lot, and I know for a fact he can do a ton of matchups. He is quite versatile. He directly responds with how well you know how to use him, and a cool character. I like him. I enjoy him. The big problem with Lizard, I think, is that Scorpion's coming. Scorpion's going to arrive in the game as a 7-star very, very soon. And the way you look at Scorpion in many ways would be Lizard plus utility with, you know, better immunities and optionality of not relying on Rupture as a physical damage, but, you know, having access to poison, and thus, for instance, being able to deal with Dark Phoenix better, thus also having access to shock and being able to do some other things better, and, you know, inflicting energy damage. So that is my big worry about Lizard. As a champion, I can fully see him being relevant and used. I do think he might get overshadowed, though. It doesn't make him worse necessarily, but, you know, this game has finite amount of resources, finite amount of human attention, and finite amount of, you know, slots and team spaces and catalysts and everything else. So I just fear that for the first bit, Scorpion is gonna kind of overshadow the Lizard potentially, and then we're gonna see whether he kind of like climbs back up. Because just about everybody that I have spoken about, like, who do you pick first? Who do you rank up first, Lizard or Scorpion? Just about everybody's going Scorpion. And it makes sense, because we know how good Scorpion was when 6-stars were still relevant. We know how, you know, crazy good his healing was, and you were able to finish the fights at full health, how control he had with the fights, and again, how versatile he was. We don't know that for sure with the Lizard yet, because new champion, unknown, unproven. So, we'll see what happens with Lizard. And Cassie is kind of in a similar boat. Like, because I like Cassie. I had a 6-star sending Cassie. I used her everywhere in Battlegrounds and Alliance Wars. I do a ton of fights with her in Alliance War, because in between the inequity and in count, you know, you drastically reduce opponent's attack. I mean, buff immunity is still quite a rare thing in the game. Power things are still useful. She does have access to the poison debuffs as well, so that can be quite helpful for, you know, varied amount of circumstances like polka dot power and so on and so forth. And she's like very versatile. Towards the end of the life cycle of the 6-stars, I did notice the change in the AI, and that was heavily and actively screwing up Cassie in the game. There's no question about it. Previously, you could start charging heavy attack in the middle of the map and, you know, reliably expect opponent dash in at you. You can't do that anymore, so you do have to adjust the way you play with Cassie, and she does require some specific, you know, skill to use. Don't know whether she's gonna cover it. Realistically, I think I'd have to move her right now until she proves me otherwise. Because again, she's a champion that's very dear to me, and I like her. Just in between Spider-Woman existing and in between uncertainty of how many of the new meta defenders she's actually going to be able to do well, I think it's going to be a bit harder for her to prove herself on consistent basis. Now, up top basically nothing changes really. I do think we have Yelena and Caroline Dean at very high level. I think Yelena has lost a bit of a touch in how many counters people have against her, and also people learning to use more different champions against her. Again, like Werewolf is a good random counter, you know, Shatra does well, and Galen does well, and so on. And yeah, and then people just getting more accustomed to her. And then we have Caroline Dean, and I think Caroline Dean is doing very well. I think, you know, a very good argument for making like this. I do think she is a bit of a step below these three ladies. I think these three ladies, in just about that order, like pre-tune-up, pre-Spider-Woman change, I'd put it in this order. After the Spider-Woman change, I'd probably want to swap them around again, but we'll see. I do think Nico and Spider-Woman are kind of like the two best champions in the Titan Crystal, and that's not going to change because none of the two editions come even close to that level. They're like 2 tiers behind. And I think Jean Grey is very hot on her heels. Jean Grey is either amazing in specific metas offensively or fairly, somewhat slightly above average in other metas offensively. She's always somewhat annoying on defense. In some metas, she's crazy annoying on defense. But one thing's for sure, she's a complete and absolute mainstay staple. I think all 5 of these champions are what you could call like staples in the game right now that you absolutely want. You want to have access to them, you want to have them ranked, you want to have them awakened, you want to learn them, and you want to use them. So that's not changing. These are the 5 best champions in, Titan Crystal. The sad part is that they lost Okoye. Okoye was also up here, and they got nothing to replace it. So again, objectively, the next Titan Crystal is worse than the current one. Should you open it? It kind of entirely depends what you're still looking for. I was kind of on a fence, so I decided what I will do is that I will open as many Titan shards as I have right now, and then probably just start saving immediately for the next one without trying to get all the champions there. And I'll do that for one of the main reasons. I also need the SIG levels. Like, I need to finish SIGing up my Nico. I want to finish SIGing up my Spider-Woman, if she isn't already. I need more SIG levels on Jean Grey. I need more SIG levels on Carolina Dean, because she's also rank 4. And, then awakening Galen and Zemo would be nice, and having some SIG levels on those. Potentially ranking up Baldy here in the future. So I'll give it a shot, but not for tomorrow. I'm more excited about the 27 new champions that are going to get added into the basic crystal than I am for the change in the Titan Crystal, I suppose. Let me know how you guys feel, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next one. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about